presence here. We encourage also the virtual attendants to ask questions throughout or close to the end of the talk. Maybe that's better not to distract the speaker and obviously you in the room. So in this session, we focus on geometric deep learning. So deep learning is a nice and upcoming field with a lot of applications, but a lot of these applications have rich geometric structures to their data and their problems, right? And we want to exploit them as much as possible. And in this session, we gathered a nice set of speakers that do this. Where the data is analyzed in terms of geometric structure, and this is encoded in the architectures. Okay, so that's so we have this nice program coming up with the first talk by Pierre-Yves Lagrave, the scientist at Thales, and he will talk about SU11 equivariant neural networks. And with that, I'd like to give the floor to you.
So thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm going to present some joint work with my colleague Frédéric Barbaresco from Thales and Yann Caban, who is a PhD student jointly supervised by Thales and the Institute of Mathematics of Bordeaux. We are running through a technical problem. Okay, so I'm going to give some operational context about this work. So the deployment of a radar in general, this is a long-term and costly process, and this could be alleviated by having an automatic way of recognizing pathological clutters. So a clutter, you can think of that as some kind of background noise, like some wind in the tree of a forest or the wave of the ocean. So what we would like to do is to have a machine learning algorithm that will allow us to identify specific clutter characteristics from their Doppler spectrum fluctuation. So in this context, machine learning techniques have already been used for processing Doppler signals. So starting with classical algorithms like the use of CNN or LSTM operating on Doppler signatures, and more recently by using some geometric learning approach in which the algorithms are operating on the signals represented as complex covariance matrices. So as you may know, machine learning and in particular deep learning algorithms are not necessarily robust to perturbation of their input. So in our context, the perturbation could be due to some thermal noise to the sensor. And it has been recently shown that basically by operating directly on the structure of the algorithm in order to encounter some specific properties, then we can increase the robustness of the algorithm. So an example of that is the use of CNN for image processing tasks, which are robust to translation thanks to their underlying convolution operator. So what we would like to do here is basically to generalize this kind of geometrical robustness to algorithms operating on complex covariance matrices. So I'm going to start by giving a bit of background on equivalent neural networks, in particular on GCNN, by building some intuition from the use of CNN in image processing tasks. So this part is going to echo with what was presented by Max Swilling on Wednesday on its keynote talk, so I'm not going to expand too much on that. So let me start by giving some reminder about the two-dimensional convolution operator. So basically what we have is a kernel function, an original image, and we compute a convolution map by evaluating the function which is defined here. What is interesting with this map is that it is what we call equivariant with respect to translation, in the sense that if we translate the original image, then the convolution map that you can see here is translated accordingly. So what we would like to do in the following is to generalize this convolution operator, which can be written as an integral over R2 in order to make it equivariant to other transforms than translation. So to do so, we need a generic way to represent transforms. So we leverage on group theory. And for planar image classification, these groups that are of interest are those which contains transforms which are semantically preserving, like the translation group, rotation group, and especially Euclidean group SE2, for which you can see some example of action on one image here. So once we have that, we can generalize the convolution operator by integrating over the group G instead of the group of rotation of translation R2, and we are integrating with respect to the R measure of the group instead of the Lebesgue measure of the group. The new operator CG is now equivariant with respect to the action of the group G. So I'm going to illustrate that by the example of the action of SE2 on a planar image. So I have here a kernel aiming at detecting the eyes, and what I do first is a simple convolution as usual. So I have a convolution image here in which the eyes are detected. Then I rotate the kernel, I apply exactly the same process, I have a new image, and so on and so forth, so that at the end, what I get is a stack of convolution image. So if we forget about the discretization here, what we get is a three-dimensional object, which is now a SE2 convolution image. To illustrate how the equivariance property works, I'm going to focus on the rotation aspect, and I'm going to apply a rotation to the original image. So I apply exactly the same process as before. I obtain a new three-dimensional SE2 convolution image, in which you can see that the detection of the eyes has been shifted along the theta axis consistently with the angle of rotation of the original input. So this is exactly the generalization of the equivariance property that we are aiming for. So group convolutional neural network have basically same kind of structure as convolutional neural network, in which we are replacing the R2 convolution operator by the G convolution. So this type of architecture, they were initially introduced by Cohen and Welling in 2016. And in this architecture, we can perform some local pooling in order to get to some kind of local robustness. And also we can even make this architecture invariant by performing some global pooling. They have already been applied for a wide range of applications. However, if you look at this application, they are only involving a very limited number of underlying symmetry groups, like rotation, translation in dimension 2 or 3, a combination of thereof, and for instance, permutation group for graph. However, what we have to have in mind is that there does exist a very sound theory that would allow to generalize to more general group of symmetry. So in particular, the work from Cohen and Welling was first for discrete group. This was generalized to handle compact group with regular representation. And now we are able to handle more general groups and representation by using what is called steerable neural network, for which you have to deal with some kernel constraints in order to still have the equivariance. So the takeaway from here is that basically we have some theoretical tools that will allow to cover a wide range of applications. However, if we are considering new application with non-traditional underlying symmetry group, then some additional working is needed in order to make the approach practical. So in that sense, there is a very interesting paper that was very recently published by Finzi and his colleague, including Max Welling, in which they explain how to solve for the kernel constraints for generic group, as long as you know the infinitesimal generator of the Lie groups, and that these groups have a finite representation over the data they are acting on. So now I'm going to explain how we can couple equivariance with hyperbolic geometry for radar clutter classification. So I'm going to first describe a little bit the modeling approach that we have used. And in particular, we rely on some previous work by my colleague Yann Caban. And in that work, what we are assuming is that the radar signal is represented as an autoregressive Gaussian process with zero mean, and we also make some stationary assumptions. By doing so, we can represent each cell of the space by covariance matrices, and because the covariance matrix and because of the stationarity assumption, the covariance matrices will have a specific structure that you can see here. There seems to be a problem with the display of the equation. Yes, so this kind of structure here is called Toeplitz-Hermitian positive definite matrices. So now I'm going to explain how hyperbolic geometry comes into the picture. So there are several models for hyperbolic geometry, and one of them in dimension 2 is the Poincaré disk model. We can undo that space with a non-Euclidean metric that we denote ρd here, and which allows to measure distance within that space. Now, an interesting result is that we can actually identify the manifold of THPD matrices of dimension n to a product space of n-1 Poincaré disk and R plus étoile, thanks to a theorem by Trench and Verblinski. So the corresponding isomorphism is denoted psi n here, and the coefficient mu1 to mu(n-1) lying in the Poincaré disk are called the reflection coefficient. So if we deal with rescale correlation matrices, basically this coefficient, they capture the Doppler information, and in the following, we'll only consider this coefficient. So now I'm going to say a few words about the special unitary group SU11 and its link with the Poincaré disk. So this group that is defined here acts on the Poincaré disk through Mobius transform. So you have some animation here of that action. And this action is going to be transitive with the two-dimensional group of rotation U1 being the stabilizer of the center of the disk. This means that we can see the Poincaré disk as an homogeneous space, as it is going to be isomorphic to the quotient space of SU11 with U1. Therefore, we can represent the elements of D as cosets elements, and we can further leave them to group elements in SU11. So coming back to our problem, we can see THPD matrices as n-1 cosets elements. And what we would like to do is to achieve local robustness with respect to the action of SU11 on this kind of input. To do so, we propose to use generalized convolution operators within GCNN architecture. So more precisely, we have introduced the following operator for the convolution, so psi-θ, which is defined on the Poincaré disk as an integral with respect to the R measure of the group. So we are integrating with respect to SU11 elements of a kernel function kθ and a feature map F. So in practice, the kernel function kθ will be chosen as a small neural network, and because we want to operate on Euclidean data, we will combine it with the Riemannian logarithm. In order to benefit from weight sharing, we are going to localize the integral, and we will limit the integration to SU11 elements lying in the ball of radius m, where m can be thought as the bandwidth of the filter. So here you have a commutative diagram. So this should remind you of the presentation of Max Weying on Wednesday, where basically it is the same. Applying the group action and then the convolution is the same as first performing the convolution and then applying the group action. So this, as I was saying, operator is equivariant, and what we would like to do is to use it to instantiate equivariant convolution layer within classical convolutional neural network structure. So in terms of numerical consideration, so computing our convolution operator is generally challenging, in particular because SU11 is not a compact group. So the first thing we can do is to consider a Monte Carlo approach for the estimation, where we are going to sample the GI elements according to the R measure conditioned by the localization of the integral we are performing at the evaluation point. We can use a torus parametrization of the SU1 group, which is given by the Cartan decomposition of this group. However, this approach has some caveats because the feature map at layer n+1 is basically going to be a nonlinear function applied to the convolution between the feature map at layer n with the kernel function. So the evaluation grid are going to be dependent across layer. And if you look at what is actually going to happen, you are going to have an exponential growth of the evaluation grid with the depth of the network, so which is not really good for practical application. Another approach that we are considering is the use of Elgason Fourier analysis, so which is a generalization of Fourier analysis in the Euclidean space. So we had this kind of tool in mind while designing our convolution operator, and the Elgason Fourier transform of a function defined on the Poincaré disk is going to be defined as this kind of integral, which is really similar to the classical Fourier transform, except that we are basically considering here hyperbolic waves instead of a standard planar wave. So there exists an inversion formula, and also there is some convolution theorem that can be used to compute our convolution. So doing so, we do it by computing 3 different integrals, and we can use a constant evaluation grid across layer. So we have a polynomial complexity in terms of memory with respect to the depth of the network. In order to speed the practical computation, what we can also do is to expand the kernel function on a functional basis, like it was done by Eric Beckers by considering this plane on link group, so that we can pre-compute the Elgason Fourier transform of the basis elements as to save some time in the computation. So I'm going to to give a little bit of information about some experimental proof of concept that we have done. So I insist on the fact that's really a POC, not necessarily an extensive testing of the approach. So we have worked with in dimension 10, and we have simulated the data according to the formula which is here, in which we are representing the thermal noise of our sensor as a complex Gaussian distribution with standard deviation sigma. We have instantiated a simple architecture of our approach, and we have compared it with a fully connected neural network operating on the complex reflection coefficient, both architecture having the same number of parameters roughly. As we are interested in the robustness aspect, we are considering a different value of sigma for generating training and evaluation set. So if you look at what happens on the chart, which is here, so in blue, you have the performance of our equivalent neural network trained on data generated with sigma equal 1, as we increase the standard deviation of the testing set. Similarly, you have the same kind of result for in green for the fully connected neural network. What you can see is that our approach significantly outperforms the fully connected neural network as we increase the standard deviation of the testing set. So I think I'm running a bit out of time, so I'm not going to expand more on these results, but we find that these results are promising, but we definitely need some further work in order to provide some more consistent testing of the approach. So in terms of further work, what we would like to do is to test, of course, the approach on real-world data. However, collecting clean data signals is not something which is easy. We would like to scale the approach by building deeper architectures with multiple layers. And in order to do so, we believe that implementing specific module on low-level library like the Elgason Fourier transform in CUDA may be something that we may want to do. And also in terms of computing the Monte Carlo estimate, investigating other parameterization of the group will be something interesting in order to better analyze the convergence of the estimate. Finally, we would like to generalize also the approach. So first of all, by considering richer representation of SU11 instead of the kind of regular one that we have introduced. And also, we would like to leverage on the block-Toeplitz matrices embedding into Siegel spaces in order to investigate if we can do a block-wise generalization of our approach by building SUNN equivalent neural network. And finally, we believe that there may exist some link with the quadrant representation theory, which may allow us to speed up the computation of our convolution operator. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any question if we have still some time.
Okay, thank you very much for a great talk. Again, for the people online, please feel free to ask questions. And there's already questions from the audience, so please go ahead. So maybe you can come up front. Yeah, this is the mic. So this is fine.
It's fine. So I'm just trying to understand, because I've heard a bit about this, and there's this emphasis on equivariance, and sometimes I've also seen people trying to focus on invariance, and I want to understand why do we prioritize? Why are we looking at equivariance here instead of, say, I don't know, to me invariance seems somehow more beneficial at times. Or
yeah. So here our purpose is basically a robustness. So we don't expect the output of the network to be invariant with respect to this kind of change. However, we want the inner representation of the data within the network to be consistent with this kind of deformation. Right? It's different. Invariance means that you have a function f of x is equal to f of g of x. And equivariance, it just means that the data is deformed accordingly to the group action.
So with equivariance, you can have multiple layers, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can that. And basically, in order to build invariant neural network, what you do in general is to have multiple equivariant layers, and then you do some global pooling to reach the invariance.
Okay. I have another question regarding this. So you treated the Poincaré disk as a homogeneous space of SU11. Yeah. Does this impose any kernel constraints? Because SU11 is a bigger group and the Poincaré is smaller.
So the way we have defined the convolution, no, because we are using a very special form of representation for the group. We are working with regular representation. And in fact, if you look at the way we have defined the convolution, you can think of that as a standard grouped convolution for the regular representation, but with the use of some special function which do some kind of projection in the Poincaré disk. So somehow you don't have the problem of the kernel constraint. Maybe.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Great. And there's one question from the audience.
So wonderful talk. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask about how general is this method, because it seems to apply to waves and tupeless matrices coming out of that. But I think that problem you see in radio astronomy, you see it in MRI imaging, you see it in wireless communication. So is your method basically should it be the standard method for all these types of data, you think?
So there was one slide on which I go through a bit quick on it, and there is a major assumption, which is stationarity of the signal. So the top-bit matrices are due to the stationarity assumption, and the embedding of these matrices onto the product space of Poincaré disk rely on that assumption. So if you have signals that are not stationary, for now, this method is not going to apply. However, it's not excluded that we can build similar kind of ideas for the Steinfeld manifold of covariance matrices. Maybe there is some work to be done here, but the approach here only focuses on stationary signals.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other question? Otherwise, we'll continue to the next talk in the sake of time. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
So the next presentation will be a video presentation by Fabian Fuchs. He is online, if I saw correctly, in the Zoom session. So that's great. Are able to ask questions later on. So